All right. So let's do this. Okay, so this is the thing. So where we're at now in this whole conversation, where, where we're at now for this conversation is, yeah, we got to go through this, because it's getting a little bit more sophisticated. It's some more details, and this is the expansionary thinking. Like we went through all of us went through K through 12, and same books, same definitions, same words. And we learned in Eastern philosophy that words could have multiple meanings, 70 sometimes. The Hebrew letters, depending on the nikudot, the vowels, could have, three or four, 15 maybe even words that can be derived from it, right? So there's no finite set way of understanding it. Well, that's why there's so many different opinions and there's so many different outlooks, because God created an opening for the soul to express itself, right? And in order for the soul to express itself, it has to have different compartments, right, of expression that are unique to that individual. So that's what the sages teach us: 70 faces to the Torah. There's different insights, different things. But I'll say this, like just a side point. The thing is, you know, the Jewish community, the Jewish dynamic is a very unique one, right? And so today I had a meeting at the Rabbinut of Israel, and part of that meeting was starting this conversation about you know me doing conversions and it being accepted by Israel. So that conversation started today with one of the main rabbis, and he was very aware, like saying like how the African American situation is a real thing and it's growing, and there isn't so many rabbanim that. Anyway, so the point is like this. Oh, okay, all right. So the thing is like this. So the point is the thing. So like you asked me a question about the whole thing of Houston, and this whole dynamic davening when you go in there and things like this. It's like Jews, regardless of who they are, Sephardic, Ashkenaz, African American, it doesn't matter who they are. Religious Jews are very defensive, very separatist from non-Jews, right? And it's not because they're elitist or racist; it's because the Torah tells us that, right? The Torah tells us, and actually this week's parsha, right, that a person who's not circumcised can't come to your Pesach table, right? You know, if non-Jews, touch your wine, you're not permitted. I mean, depending on, if it's boiled, it's the whole thing. But the point is just saying the Torah separates us from the non-Jew, right? So the question is, what makes someone Jewish and what makes someone not? Okay, that's a big debate, right? There's a lot of opinions about it. But the thing is, it's community by community, right? So like say if I make a ruling, or Rabbi Pinchas or this some other rabbi in LA, whoever, someone makes a ruling, it doesn't mean that someone else has to accept that, right? Because it's an open pendulum, right? So the thing is, if people want to be in a Jewish community, they're going to have to build those relationships. They're going to have to spend time, get to know people, explain their story. You know, um, and that's it. You know what I mean? It's a grind. It's a grind. We don't have our own community. We didn't grow up in a kosher environment. You know what I mean? So we have to seek it out, and we have to do it in a way that people feel comfortable with us. You know what I mean? No one's obligated. That's the thing about Judaism. It's not like Islam or Christianity where they're looking to for more new people, new recruits, conversions. Other Jews like we're already a community. We're good. Now there is an idea in Judaism where there are people, Gerim, who are and actually Rabbi Pinchas gave a class about this last night. It was just for a few of us, but he talked about it. He's talked about it before, but the Torah says that the person who goes through a process of having a circumcision was never a goy, right? They were just at a status of in between because of the environment they grew up in, right? And so once they get to that awakening that, hey, me, Hashem, my soul, Torah, mitzvot, this whole thing, then they get to a point where they get this process of, they go through it. For guys, you have to go through circumcision and that type of thing, right? If they're already circumcised, they draw blood. But the point is saying it's a real process, right? And so, um, what I suggest to people is focus on the learning. You know what I mean? Focus on the learning. Focus on functioning as Jews. Whether it's having a kosher kitchen, whether it's all the different laws that we have to have. Male and female relations, all these things, right? So all these things are things that you implement. You say, hey, I'm a Jew. All right, so do Jewish stuff. You know, do the halakha, follow the halakha. And then when you get to a point where it's just natural for you, then you can say, hey, you know what? Our next level is to join the community, right? And if your next level is to join the community, I mean, that's the whole thing. You guys are like in kind of like the outskirts, it sounds like a little bit, right? So it's like a 2 hour. So I don't know if there's any Jewish communities around where you're at, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, we're actually about 2 hours from Houston, not Houston. I'm saying you got me saying Houston. No, Dallas, the Dallas area, and so that is the largest. That's the largest Jewish community in this area. There's a Jewish synagogue in the Tyler area, uh, but it's not a community. It's kind of it's very interesting. It's not like a community. Like you can't go there and there's like no kosher restaurants in Thailand, period, at all.
Mm.
So there's like no kosher shops. There's none of that there. So it's a bit different.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I mean, I wish I knew Dallas better. I could give some advice on it. Like, if it's LA, it'll be different. But it's just saying that that's what it is. I mean, like it's like people think that there's like a permission to keep the Torah. If you identify as a Jew and identify as a person and you have your reasons for your belief, no one can challenge that, right? Now that's separate than another joining communities that may have a certain outlook on these things, right? So certain communities will be more lenient, some communities are more stringent, some communities, want certification, but it doesn't matter. Going to a shul doesn't matter. Anybody, it's a public facility. You know what I mean? Just like going to a church or a mosque. You know what I mean? It's no different. Now, if you want to participate, meaning being counted in the minyan, right? Because like there's a minyan with 10 men. If you want to be counted in the minyan, that's one thing. If you want to be called up to the Torah for an aliyah, right? When you see the guys say a blessing in the Torah, if you want that, if you want to be able to put together a base din, right? So if you have an issue with somebody, something like that. So these things will require that community to understand your Judaism as it relates to their hashkafa, right? And so what that would probably lead to is a concept of what they would call conversion, but it's not really conversion, it's rather acclimating, right? So it's the idea of the man going through that process and having witnesses, right? Hold on, Chief Rabbi Picos. Hold on 1 second. All right, anyways, a guy, Amari Stoudemire is getting married, so yeah, he's sending messages, the whole thing. Anyways, I'll be in New York
Yeah,
actually,
I
I think in
suppose.
April. Okay, so that's the thing. You just have to figure that out, just you just got to figure that out. You know what I mean? And the process. The main thing is you already have a family. You already have a family. You already have kids. You already have your Shabbos table. You have everything. You already have all the tools, right? So the thing is now is if and when you guys do want to be a part of the community, we have to strategize on what's the best way to do that. Now, maybe in the future, I'll be in a position, but what I'm doing is like, for people who want to move to Israel, you know what I mean, that type of thing. So we'll talk about as that conversation progresses. But um, the main thing is yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Now I do want to. I did have a conversation to I guess to the benefit of the Dallas community. I was able to speak to the rabbi at this particular one of the synagogues, which is an Orthodox synagogue, and this what ends up happening was that there's two brothers that I met in the Dallas area. One I actually met physically. The other one I just conversated with over the telephone. But there was a misunderstanding because he asked me, hey, what shul do you go to? And so I explained, well, I don't have a shul here at all. I live about 2 hours away. And so he interpreted that, hey, I want you to meet this brother. This brother's actually going through a conversion process and so forth. And he assumed that I was asking for how to convert, how to become a part of that community, and that was the thing. So it was more so I asked him, I said, well, hey, what shul do you go to? And he told me, and and it's but then it was about hey, I would like to come out and maybe pray, diving, whenever we come out, which is like maybe twice a month or whatnot. And so I was able to communicate with the rabbi at that particular synagogue. And the next time we go to Dallas, we'll go in there. I'll meet with him and we'll communicate. But it's from the mindset. It was a misunderstanding that this one brother assumed that I was asking to convert into that community. And
Yeah,
so so I had to kind of correct and say, well, no, what I was saying was that, because he asked me about it. And I said, well, I like to come and pray and dive in. But also, the other brother that I spoke to, he basically let me know what was going on within the Dallas communities, because at those synagogues, a lot of them are still on, they're pretty much on high alert. So they're having to vet everybody. They want to vet everyone, which
everybody.
is understandable. Yeah, it's understandable. So it's not. I don't think it is. I tend to have the highest good and the highest good about any synagogue, any person. Period. So I believe that the whole misunderstanding was simply because they thought that I was asking to convert it rather than just coming to pray. And so but I will have a discussion with the rabbi, y'all willing, um, from that standpoint.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely. I mean, it's just whatever you want to go with it. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing. It's like wherever you want to go with it is there. If and the thing about a person shouldn't extend themselves past what they desire, right? So if that's what you guys want to do. It doesn't change our relationship. It doesn't change your relationship with the Rabbanut. But in terms of community at this point, because there's so few of us and we're all scattered, that there has to be that. And then also for the boys, I mean, it just depends what type of girls you want them to marry. You know what I'm saying? Like, do you want them to be in that conversation of marriage when they're older? You know what I mean? Do they have that access to marry a girl who, is Shomer Mitzvot, right? Girl keeps Shabbat, keeps kosher, these types of things. Maybe a girl who grew up Jewish, converted, someone who came back, the whole thing. So there are options. So that's another part, right? Is the kids and the family, like, if it's okay that they go a different route, it's okay they go a different route, but as long as it's understood, right? Is that the kids, like, who they're gonna marry? You know, are they going to marry people who are Jewish, or are they going to marry whoever? You know, maybe Jewish, maybe not, whatever. You know, love finds its way, right? I don't have a choice, right? I have to marry a Jewish woman. You know what I mean? I'm saying like that. That's what I have to do. You know, Mari Stoudemire has to marry a Jewish woman. You know what I mean? Like we don't have a choice. Like it's forbidden for us to try to marry a non-Jewish woman. You know what I'm saying? So it's just these things for the big picture just have to be thought about. Like I said, right now we're learning, right? We're in the process of learning, and what we're doing now is that we're learning some like very deep ideas, but these deep ideas are kind of like giving us to a pendulum to understand how the sages understood the Torah and how they understood Judaism or the mitzvot. Like, what was the relationship to them? I understand we could pick up a book and we could read it, and there's so many great authors or whatever. But I want to get into the mind of the thinking process of that, right? Because a lot of times I've noticed in a lot of Hebrew Israelite communities. Not saying you have anything to do with that, but just because I'm teaching in that space, that it's like a lot of them are reading the Bible from a very Christian perspective, right? And there's no like depth to it. It's very like this is what it says, and this is how I interpret it, right? As where there's a whole system, as you can see, of thought, right? There's a whole system of thought. There's a whole system of this. There's all these elements. Your soul is connected, and the mitzvot are connected to your soul, and the world you live in is broken, and all the creatures, all the different levels of desire that exist. All these things are connected to you, and it's the Torah too as well, right? And we have a purpose, and God has a plan, and we're supposed to come into this world to correct our neshama and prepare ourselves to be resurrected at some point. All these things, right? So all these things have to be taken into account when you read Genesis or Exodus, or any of the books of the Torah, right? So that's a big deal, right? It's a big deal that we have that in mind, and that's at least from the teaching that I do. I think that's the most important thing because you guys are already knowledgeable people. I mean, look at the board behind you. You know what I mean? Like you guys are knowledgeable people. You have knowledge. All these different things. So that's not the issue. But the issue is just like, will you be able to benefit from the perspective that's been carried on for millennium? You know what I'm saying? And the teaching's going on for millennium. Like, do you want to be a part of that greater conversation of Torah thought? Right? And it's not to say that your whole uniqueness is there, but put your uniqueness in a vice, right? Like we're learning that the soul, right, from 0 to 13 is in this place of selfishness. But 13, another aspect of the soul, an inner aspect of the soul starts to sprout, like breaks through the soil. And that part is this aspect of this the sharing part of the soul. And the sharing part of the soul is really the uniqueness of the individual. The selfish soul is not the uniqueness of the person. You can find 1,000 selfish people. But with the people who revealed that inner aspect, that sharing component that can only come out through the Torah and the mitzvot, that aspect of inner sharing is what makes you different from every person in the world, right? And your contribution, right? So it's the same way. It's like, okay, I could pick up the Bible and I could read it for myself. Okay, fine. But when you attach yourself to the thought of all the teachers from this part of the world and that part of the world and this time period and that time period and all these time periods, you kind of remove your own self perspective. That own maybe it could even be coming from a place of selfishness or ego. Like, hey, this is what God means. So you put that in a vice, right? And that vice that you put it in, evolves and now a different aspect of your intellect comes out, right? Not the intellect of me, but the intellect of we, right? And that component is crucial for all human beings, and only few people get that access. If you are non-Jew, like what do you do? What do you have to correct your soul? Well, you go to work, you make money, you come home, you sleep, you wake up, you do it again, you rest on the weekends, you do that again. How many years does that happen? What about your soul? What about your life? What about a bigger consciousness? Oh, well, I go to the church or I go to the mosque. Okay, fine. Or I go to the synagogue. But what about your soul? How's it being corrected? If you don't know that exists, or that's the plan of creation, and you just pick fruit. I mean, because the Christianity, they talk about resurrection of the dead too, right? So it's just saying that a lot of people could take bits and pieces of the Torah and create their own religions, right? We've seen that, right? And so now, what we're saying now is just saying that no, we want to participate in the thoughts. Not saying people are above me; they're just people that were before me, right? And I want to learn how they saw the world during that time period based off of the conditions that they were in and based off of this particular individual's elevation. I want to learn that. I wish, whatever, everything happens for a reason, but I wish I could read my grandfather's Torah. We talked about this before. Anyway, so let's go into some Rav Ashlag. And it's really quick before we go into it. Let's just review these different chambers because he's going to be throwing these things around, and we just got to be on top of it because the mind's going to be and we want to be able to go. Go ahead, please.
I do have a question. As I was reading, okay, so what? Let me see where if I can find it here. What is the difference between when it says in the world section, where it says the lights that are enclosed in these five worlds are, and then they give you have the Yehuda, the Haya, Neshama, Ruach, and the fish, right?
Yeah.
And it has that abbreviation, the YAHNARN. But then when you go, let's see here, where it says in chapter 42, it says the five lights, and they're saying that this is the abbreviation for the five levels of the soul, the five lights of the soul, NARANHAY.
Yeah, it's interesting how he
Okay,
does it,
so
right? So he does is the NA, right? Nefesh, the RA Ruach, the NA Neshama, and then and you have Chaya and Yechida, those two of us, I guess. So I guess they put
right,
an HA, and then a YA.
right.
So
So
that's the way they're doing it.
So are they the same? And so if we take those two abbreviations, um, like basically, is there a difference? Because it just can it be written differently like that, or is this two different concepts that we're talking about?
No. So the concept itself is that there's five parts of the soul, right? Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yekida, right? Those five levels. But the way that it's written inside of the text is a code. They write it as a code. So if a non-Jew picked up the book and they would see that, they would have no idea what is being said.
Right, right.
So all the codes, all the Torah is full of codes, right? It's all coded. It's a coded document. The Talmud is a coded document. They wrote it specifically so non-Jews would not be able to understand it. So all these different acronyms or pieces are how when you open the Zohar, you're going to see that acronym right there. And you'll be like, that's the levels of the soul. These are the levels of the five worlds. This, you know what I'm saying? You will see these things and you'll be able to notice them. So it's written in code. So
Okay.
that's a code. The acronym is a code that you will see in the text because they're not going to write out. I mean, you could sometimes see it, but when you read it, everyone's using the same coded language. So he's
Right.
showing you the codes of the
Okay.
text. That's why he's giving you an introduction to the Zohar because this is the language you're going to see in all the different texts that come around. Or even if it doesn't say it explicitly, you can see the alluding to it, right? So
Okay.
yeah, so that's cool. So it's the same exact thing. It's just the acronym is the code for it.
Okay. Gotcha.
Any other questions on this point?
Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let's um let's get busy. Okay. So we left off at chapter, was it 44?
I believe yeah, man's
Or was it 45?
let's
Yeah,
see.
I think it was 45.
Yeah, 45.
Yeah, it's 45. Okay. So hold on one second.
That's right here.
Okay.
No, hold on. Wait.
Yeah, 45. I mean, I think you could maybe say 46.
Wait. Yeah, we covered before the age of 13.
Yeah, that was 40. That was 44,
Yeah. Okay. That's
right?
44. Okay. So I think we're at 45.
Yeah, 45. So we'll just review a little bit on.
I remember us reading.
I think we're already there. Oh man, wait, did they go out? Jeez.
Let's see. I can't remember 46.
No, no,
I remember us reading it. Let's see.
One second. Okay. All right. So okay. So again, this idea of the 13, the idea of the age of 13, and being able to we could just briefly review. Okay. So you guys have good notes. So I think we're in a good space. But I just want to review outside briefly. It just you said before the HC there could be no revelation at the point of this heart, right? So he's saying that this aspect, if you wanted to know in the frame of desire, right? If you want to understand the frame of desire, the root of where all desire manifests, according to this teaching, it's the heart. And he says at the age of 13, he begins to involve himself with Torah mitzvot, even if he doesn't have consciousness. So anyways, we get that idea. He's showing the power of this idea. So when a kid is doing mitzvot, he doesn't know so much at 18. He doesn't know Kabbalah. He doesn't know all these things. He just does it because his dad tells him to do it, right? But he's using this point to explain that when the kid is at that age, he still is correcting his soul, but he's correcting the inanimate aspect of his soul. So, in the same way that there's different levels of progression of desire, rock, plant, animal, human, these different four levels, these levels of different levels of desire exist within inside of us, right? They exist inside of us, right? But they not just exist inside of us, they exist inside of all the different five worlds, right? So in the level of Asya, right, which is the lowest level, the world of action, right? The rock kingdom is there, but also the plant kingdom, also the animal kingdom, also the human kingdom. But in the world above that, the same thing exists, right? And so he's showing us as we progress in our ability to understand and rationalize the mitzvot and the connect, we correct these different aspects of our soul. And not just the aspect of our souls, but within the souls, there's different characteristics or different expressions of desire. And so we do that. So even the kid who's at his bottom, so he says like this, I mean, the kid without kavana, he says, do the mitzvah, do not, he says, mitzvahs do not require. Okay, so therefore the actions done with proper intention can still purify the desire received, if only the first level referred to as inanimate. To the extent that he purifies the inanimate aspect of his desire to receive, he builds the 613 limbs in the point in his heart, namely the aspect of, like, say, the rock aspect of his heart. I mean, he says inanimate, but we know what he means: rocks, grains, pebbles, dirt, sand, all these things. They all have desire levels. I mean, it's crazy to think about it, like all these things actually like having life in them. Like you go to the beach and you see so many grains of sand. And you're like, wait, that sand is alive, right? And you see a huge mountain across the street from all the sand, and be like, wow, they're from the same kingdom. And then you look down the street at a person's house and they have a garden, right? And they have all these like soil and this, and it's like, and that's from the same kingdom too. And it's a world all around us. Okay. So he's saying, so that aspect of that inanimate aspect, that rock level, right? Whatever, inanimate, I'm just keep using the word rock. That aspect is a point of correction. And he's using a kid who doesn't really know so much, that, right? And if and if you saw the other classes that I've been given this week, mostly with OTNL, at least online. A lot of people, some people don't want it online because they feel like, probably, I don't know, everyone says thing. Black people don't care. Anyways, so the thing is like this. So the we understand that the soul itself, right? The soul itself is is expressed in two parts, right? Through limbs and in organs, right? And so the limbs and the organs, we have spiritual limbs and we have spiritual organs, right? And so that's what the soul is. That's a way that we understand the expression of the soul. Like, I mean, what does the soul look like? We don't know, right? Like, what does the soul look like? Okay, maybe we'll find out here. So the thing is like this. So when God blew a ruach into Adam, now it's starting to make sense because that aspect of the soul being divided into 248 parts and 365 parts is directly connected, obviously, to the mitzvot. We have 248 positive mitzvahs, meaning these are the mitzvahs you go after and you do, right? Netilat yadayim, these types of things you go out and you do. And then we have 365 mitzvahs of things that we stay away from. And so this idea of the mitzvot is exactly how God designed the body, right? And the body is an expression of how God created the soul. So we receive light from the Creator. That light goes into our soul. That light that goes into our soul goes and fuels all the different aspects of the body, right? And that's where our health comes from. That's where our vitality comes from. It comes through the Torah. It comes through mitzvot for the Jew. Because this is how the Jew is designed differently than other nations. What's my proof? The fact that we have to do the mitzvahs. You think God is so cruel that he would take people that's supposed to come in this world and correct their souls, and he would just leave them out? I was like, hey, I know you need the mitzvahs. I know you need to correct your soul, but I ain't going to give it to you. Right? That's not the creator. No, only the Jew has the responsibility, only Israel. Because Israel is physically designed different than the non-Jew. We're physically different. Our souls are different. We have different levels to our soul that the non-Jew doesn't have. A lot of people don't like hearing this because it sounds like supremacy. No, it's not. It's called equality, right? Everybody plays a specific role. All the nations play a specific role, but God put Israel on a pedestal and said, I want the nations to learn through you. But it's important to understand that our vitality as Jews comes from the Torah and the mitzvot. That's what fuels our soul, and our soul fuels our body. And the body creates the experience that we have. All right. So he says, after performing each of the 613 mitzvahs, the 360, the 613 limbs in the point of the heart. And he says the inanimate aspect of the soul is of sanctity will also be perfected, right? So he's saying, and he's saying the 248 spiritual limbs are built by the performance of the 248 positive mitzvahs. The 365 spiritual limbs are built through keeping the 365 negative commandments, right? And he says eventually the point of the heart becomes perfected. Face, parsuf, and the soul of holiness. Okay, so we went over that last week, right? And so we just reviewing because this is the basis, right? Okay, so I think this is no. Yeah, almost. Okay, so this is the end of the last part, right? He said the perfect light assists a person in investing his efforts in Torah mitzvot and to ascend to greater heights. So how do we go higher and higher, higher? Like when we were reading that introduction to Rabbi Chaim Vital, right? In that introduction, he said that people throughout the ages have wanted to ascend and go to the highest levels in these things, right? So what was he talking about? He's talking about these 5 worlds that exist within inside of us. And each one of us can correct them and become prophets and prophetess. Not the same prophet as Ezekiel and Isaiah. That's a different situation. Moshe, whatever, is a different time. The light of the Creator, there was less concealment. No, but within our generation, between our time, we could be that same light as they were for their generation, right? Even though we're at our generations at a lower level. Ve'or hanefesh hazeh mekunea b'Hashem, or hademima hakedush de olam ha'asi. So he said like this. The light of the soul is called Doming Min Kedusha, the light of the holy inanimate, right? He said the world of Asya. So we know the world of Asya, that's the lowest world, right? The goal is to purify the inanimate part of the desire to receive, present in the body of a person, as discussed. So that aspect of that rock, keep using rock, but inanimate, that rock aspect, that the mineral, the grain, that aspect of desire exists within us. When we look at the nature, we're looking at ourselves. Nature's not separate from us. Our soul is built of the same compounds of the physical world, right? And so when we are correcting ourselves, we're correcting an entire world within us and around us. And he says, and the goal of purification in an abnormal part of desire is to receive in the present in the body of a person. That's discussed. It acts to enlighten spiritually, and this is the parallel to the aspect of the inanimate in the physical, as explained above in chapter 35. Each individual part on the level of inanimate aspect. Do not move, he says, do not move on its own. Rather, a general motivation motivates all the particulars as a unit. All of the light of the parsuf of the soul of Asya, even if it has 613 limbs, even if it has 316 limbs, the 613 changes in form in the path of receiving the influence. Not, it says, will not show signs of these changes. Rather, the signs will be a greater light that surrounds all of them together without distinguishing between details. Okay, so let's break this. Let's go through this. Okay, so he's taking us to the different levels of the correction of the soul. Okay, so the world of Asiya is connected to the world of Nefesh. The world of Asiya and the world of Nefesh connects us to the aspect of the world itself of Asiya, as we know, has the four parts, right? It has inanimate, it has the rock, plant, animal, human, right? So he's saying in the when we do certain mitzvot, we correct the aspect of the soul called nefesh. He didn't say nefesh here, by the way. I'm saying that. The soul of the nefesh, also the world of Asiya. And within the world of Asiya, there's four parts, and we correct the lowest part of that, which is the inanimate part, right? So we have four levels of desire to receive in each of the aspects of our soul, right? Which is included in the different aspects of the world that we live in. So there's a part of our soul that's operating in a world that we cannot see through our five senses. That's the world of Yitzira, right? Right. The world that we live in now. This is the world of Asya, right? This is the world around us. So we can see ourselves, our bodies, the world around us in this world. But then there's a world above us that we're currently living in right now too. And not only is there a world above us, there's another three worlds above that, right? And we live in all of these worlds at the same time. It doesn't make sense, I know, but it's true. He says, and it acts to spiritually enlighten us. So this aspect of correcting and doing the mitzvot is literally each mitzvot is correcting a different part of our body or fueling that part of that body with light. If we commit an Avera in a certain area, it will block a certain aspect of our spiritual arteries and our spiritual limbs. Meaning that if we do a mitzvah, that part of the body is not able to receive it because we created a blockage through our transgression. But we can do what? Repent. And when we repent, we remove that blockage and allow that light to flow into that part of the body. Right? And so that's what he's explaining to us. And he says like this. He says, all the lights of the soul of Asiya, even if it has 13 limbs, right? Because it's different, it's the same body, same reality, but different worlds. He says, the limbs do not change in form. Okay, so it's not like your body starts morphing because you're doing mitzvot, right? He's saying no. He says the 613 change in form in the path of receiving influence. will not show signs of these changes, but rather it will be general light that surrounds all of them together. So as we infuse our body parts, our neshama, and our neshama infuse our body parts with this light, then we start to express light. We are walking around with light. So it says Veda Afopi Shehi Sifurot Veshiha Sifurot Chen Ele Keyot Ve'inam Bahen Shuma Ishnuvi Veha Batel. Sorry, Vehavadel. So he says, Mafresh. And so he says like this. So he says like this: know that because of the Sifrot are divine, there's no need, there's no difference between the peak of the height of Keter, which is the highest level, the world of Adam Kadmon. I think we went over this. Yeah, Adam Kadmon, which is the highest level, and of the sphere of the Malchut. Right? So he's saying because we're talking about God's spiritual energy. So there's no separation in anything God creates. It's all one. So he's saying when you look at this idea of the highest level being Adam Kadmon or Keter, right? And you look at the lowest level being Malchut, right? In the world of Asiya, right? The lowest level of Malchut, which is in the world of Asiya, right? Because there's another aspect, right? Because all the different 5 levels that he brought in, the 5 phases, exist in all the levels as well. And then within those 5 phases, there's 4 phases that apply directly to animate, rock, plant, and animal and human kingdom, right? It sounds a little bit complicated. I mean, maybe not, because you guys have notes. But the point is saying all the way to the lowest level. He says, nevertheless, there is a vast difference from the perspective of the recipient. For the spherotes are perceived as both lights and vessels. The light in the spherot are truly divine, as discussed. But the vessels, which are the kahayavatam, which is in the lower worlds, which is the Bria, Yitzira, and Asya, these worlds. Hold on, let me just think this out. Okay, yeah. So it's Keter Chokma Bina, and then the bottom levels is Tiferet and Malchut, right? So this is this code. This is another code, right? This code is referred to the 5 phases, right? So they're saying there's 5 phases, and they put it in the system of the 5 sphirot. We know that there's 10 sphirot, which I don't think we've ever learned together, but there's 10 levels, 10 dimensions, and we'll get into that. I don't want to bring too much right here. He's bringing it for this reason right now, and so I want to trust his method, right? I don't want to just bring in other things that I think are relevant right now, but we'll see where he takes us. But there's 5 phases, right? And so he's saying the highest of the phase is Keter, and the lowest level is Malchut. And he's saying, don't think that because one is called the crown and one is called the Malchut, the manifestation, that they're separate, right? And this is the code for that. It's the Kaha Av Tum, Kavtum, right? This is the 5 phases. The vessels measured and allot the proper amount of enlightenment for the recipient. Each recipient receives only the measure appropriate for their personal level of purity. So that's the point. That's the point. When we're saying this journey of spirituality, everybody's different. Everybody has different things they're connected to. Everyone has different things. Is there an aspect of uniformity that comes along for the sake of unity? Yes. But the main point is to say that this is a system, right? He says Uvi chayni ze afopi she'ur asmol echad hu. So he says, in the same sense, even though there is only one light, we refer to the light of this in the Sfirot in plural as Nahara, the Nefesh, Ruach, Chaya. You get it. For he says, in that sense, even though it'll be so much, I need to get a board because you got to write these things out. I mean, I get it because it's been drilled in my head, but it's just you were jumping around, right? Spherot, souls, this, worlds, okay. So he says, in that sense, even though there was only light, we refer to the light of the Sphirot as plural, as the different levels of the soul, right? And for the light changes depending on the quality of the vessel. Malchut. So the light itself, this is a very big point. The light itself is the same, but the way that the light responds to the vessel is what makes it different. That's profound, right? And so he's saying that the level of Keter is the same level of Malchut. But Malchut, he's going to say right here, Malchut is the thickness covered that shields the light of the Ein Sof, such as, Insof means the endless world, right? We don't, Hashem is just a name, the name, Hashem, the Shem name, right? Elohim, all these different names. These are names that are expressing attributes. But our understanding of Hashem is that it's endless, it's beyond our logic, it's beyond our conception. But we do have his attributes. So he says, such that only a small measure of light passed through two recipients. This is appropriate to the purity of the inanimate aspect of the human body, which is why it is referred to as nefesh. The vessel of Tiferet is purer than that of Malchut. So he's saying that these different terms, Keter, Chokmah, Bina, Hesed, whatever, in this case he's saying Tiferet, Malchut, all of these levels have different levels of purity, right? And so the levels of purity is how the light that enters it reflects and responds. And so he says is appropriate to the purity of the inanimate aspect of the human body, which is why it's referred to as nefesh, the nefesh. So right now we're talking on the level of asiya, nefesh, in inanimate, right? We're seeing how these things all work together and they all are reflecting each other. He said the vessel of Tiferet is purer than the one of Malchut. Hence, the light that passes from it, from the Ein Sof, the endless world, is linked to the purity of the plant aspect in the person's, in the human, in the body of man, which is more active than the light of the nefesh, and is called the light of ruach. The vessel of Bina is even purer than that of Tiferet, and therefore the light that passes through it from the Ein Sof is linked to the purity of the animal part of the human body, which performs great actions and is called the light of the neshama. The vessel of Chokmah is the purest of all, right? So he's taking us through all the different levels and saying that, showing that it's not the light that changes, but rather the vessel. And that should give us an insight to why people are different, right? Everybody represents a level in the Sphirot. Some people are operating at the place of Tiferet, some people are in the place of Malchut, some people are developed, but we see that we all are built the same. But depending on our purity determines how the light responds to us. He said the vessel of Chokhmah is the purest of all. He said the light that passes through the endless road is linked to the purity of the aspect of the human body, and it is called the light of Chaya, which is infinite, which has infinite actions, as will be explained. So we're going to keep going higher. Uve kamur, they siri. This is the first one. They appear. He says beparsuf had nefesh. Sheikh Hane Ha'adam Bechocha Ha'asika Betorah Umitzvot Shelo Bekone. So he says like this. As mentioned, a person requires a parsuf of a nefesh due to his involvement in the Torah. When we say parsuf, we're saying they're referred to as faces. So when we say these five phases, that's an expression of a parsuf. The 10 levels, parsuf. There's many different configurations, as you will learn as time goes on. There's many different configurations on how this system works, but we're operating on the level of nefesh. He says, due to the involvement with Torah mitzvot without proper intention, it is already enclosed with a point of the light of ruach. As a person becomes stronger in Torah mitzvot with proper intentions, the plant aspect of a desire to receive becomes pure, right? You see how we're going up? Now we're in the level of ruach. Before we had nefesh. Nefesh was on the rock kingdom. Now we're above a level above that. We're in the level of Ruach. What does Ruach connect to? The plant kingdom. So that plant aspect of ourselves, that plant aspect of ourselves, which is a desire, right, becomes purified. And he builds the point of Ruach into a parsuf to the same extent that he has become stronger in the Torah by performing the 248 commandments with proper intentions. To the point, the point expands to his 248 limbs. You see how it works? By keeping the 365 negative commandments, the point expands to his 365 spiritual limbs. When he perfects himself in all of the 613 limbs, he ascends to enclose the sphere of Tiferet in the spiritual world of Asya, which transfers him to the light of the Ein Sof, the endless world. That light is called Ruach, right? So that's the idea. So now we're talking about the level of Tiferet, the level of Ruach, in the level of the plant kingdom, right? They're all one. But we have to give them these different definitions so we can understand the complexities and the details of one, right? And so over here, he says we're correcting the aspect of, say, the vegetation aspect of ourselves. We say plant, but vegetation, right? And so he's the light that is called ruach, which focuses on the purity of the vegetation plant of the body. So it's good when we do a mitzvah. So say a person says the shakol nie bivaro on the glass of water. They should have in mind that they're correcting these different aspects of their soul, right? Any mitzvah that we do, we have to have in mind that we're correcting this aspect of our soul, right? And so he says the light that is called, okay, so he says the light that is called it's focused on purifying the vegetative aspect of a person's body. Every detail of an inanimate plant and animal aspect of the world of Asiya is linked to the level of Tiferet. So obviously, as you know, in the level of Yitzira, right, which is the level above Asiya, which is the level connected to Ruach, which is the level connected to Tiferet of the five phases, right? That aspect is that aspect is it also has this plant kingdom has an aspect of the inanimate aspect, right? Also, it has an aspect of the plant that it's in that level of plant, but there's an aspect of plant within that aspect level of plant. Then you have the aspect of animal that's in that aspect of a plant, and you have the aspect of human that's inside that aspect of plant. And as we correct those aspects, those midot, or do the perform those mitzvahs, we correct that aspect within ourselves, right? He said the animal aspect of the world of Asiyas is linked to the level of Tiferet, assists the parsuf of the Ruach in a person to receive the light of the Severa of Tiferet in all of its perfection, as we explained earlier in the discussion of the light of the soul, right? It says, Umi Keno, he says, Kone, Mashuv Ze So Micha. So he says like this. The light, he says the light that he says this light is referred to as the plant aspect of holiness. The nature of its enlightenment is parallel to the physical plant, as explained above in chapter 36. Each species differs from the other in its motion. Similar, the light of the spiritual aspect of plant has great powers to enlighten the spiritual path for each and every one of the 613 limbs of the Parsuf of Ruach, right? It's a world. It's a world. It's 613 in every level, right? And as we fulfill and we do those mitzvahs in the level of Asiya, right? At the bottom level, right? And we understand there's no bottom and higher. It's just the density of that level, right, is different, right? And you can look at the way the world's designed. The level on the ground is different than the level of the sky, and the sky is different than the level of space, and the space, as we know, is different than the level of the heavens. So it's the same thing. Go outside, you're going to see different levels, right? And so he's saying here, he says each one of them limbs exemplify a particular action in the limb. So each world has 613 connections, And as we do those connections, we correct one of the four levels of the expressions of desire, right? And as we complete those four levels of desire, we elevate to the level above, right? We elevate to the level of Tiferet. And the level of Tiferet is correcting the aspect of the soul of Ruach, or the aspect of Ruach of the neshama, of the soul. And so, and also correcting the aspect of the plant, the vegetation aspect, right? But within that level, there's all the four levels of plant, rock, plant, animal, and human. And so the whole point is that as we perfect these mitzvot, we continue to go higher and higher and higher. So I want to, okay, so I think this makes sense. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. All right, so, okay, I want to stop here. Okay, I want to stop here just because we're going to be back on tomorrow. And so we're going to do some halakha. But the point is saying that, hold on one second. Okay, hold on. Um, sorry about that. Okay, okay, all right. So let's talk about it. I think it's a little bit more clear now. Yeah, right. It's a little bit more clear now. We're seeing that all these different worlds, all these different worlds have 316 connections, and each of these different connections elevate us to one of the four levels that exist inside of us, the four levels of desire. And as we overcome these four levels of desire, we go higher and higher and higher. And that's why some people are at higher states of consciousness than other people are, because those people have corrected. And people say in the secular world, "Hey, man, he worked on himself," right? So it's the same idea, but our working ourselves is constituted through Torah and mitzvot. All right. So any questions? Any statements?
Yeah.
Well, I I I really like the point where you said that we won't see like a body part or something like strange happening as you begin to correct. Sometimes it's like you're looking for something to show that, okay, I did this and now this is growing, or this is kind of manifesting, but really it's just I was thinking about the countenance, or just when you allow that light to come in at that inanimate stage, that rock stage,
Mm.
that you'll and you perform the positive commandments, the positive mitzvot, you will just begin to. I was just thinking about your countenance changing. Just
Yeah.
the way in which you move in the earth, just your light, beginning to reflect what's going on the inside, but not necessarily like you're seeing some strange thing happen in the body. That's what really stood out to me. And then just the fact of the levels, like going from that rock stage to the plant stage, and the more we correct, how we'll begin to just move up higher and higher. It made me just also think about, I don't know why my mind was going here, but I just kept thinking about the prayer, the Aaronic, the blessing, when it talks about having the countenance of Hashem, and so that we'll be more connected to be able to receive that blessing that's for Israel. That's what I was thinking about.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know. Do you want to say? I'm sorry. Do you want to say
Yeah,
something,
no, no.
Rabbi?
I'm just saying that the point is just I would just say the point is just saying recalibrating how we perceive life. That's what it comes down to, and understanding that we come from a factory production based society that has no concern with the individual. It just has a concern with its productivity. And so this information, or even this being a valuable form of life, does not exist in our society, because you're just supposed to work and die. But over here, we're learning that the souls of Israel, no, 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 we're supposed to reach, we're supposed to correct all these parts because we got a journey way past the other nations that may not be with us in the resurrection of the dead. Assuming the righteous amongst them will be, assuming. But in general, Israel, we're going to get there either way. That's the merit of being a Jew. You're getting there either way, either through Torah mitzvot or through suffering. But you're going to be, in the end, you're going to make it, right?
That's right.
So we want the easy way. We don't want the hard way. You know what I mean? We want the path of less resistance. So it just so go ahead, Rabbi.
All right. Okay. So what I appreciate is the aspect of the thinking of the sages in being able to comprehend and understand. Because okay, so it's like they said. What it made me think about as we were going through this, and it talks about the light of the Ansof, the light of the Ansof,
Ein Sof. Yep.
Insof. Okay, so the light of the Insof does not change. It doesn't change at all. But it just shines, right? But when we talk about all of the spirot, it reminds me of like our organs, like in the body itself, like all of our organs. Each organ has a different function. But if you eat a piece of bread, okay, you eat a piece of bread, and when you eat that bread, each organ benefits from that bread in a different way. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
It benefits from it. It takes certain things from it and nutrients, right? And so you ate one bread, so the bread doesn't change, but when it gets as it's moving through the body, it gives each organ the necessary nutrients that it needs, and each organ has a different function of how it processes those nutrients. Like the kidney doesn't process the same way that the liver processes. You know, the lungs doesn't function the same way. You understand? Yep. And so it's like when we're trying to correct when we're trying to correct our bodies, one of the first things that we do is we tend to first of all fast. And when you fast, that really like resets the body. That like disconnects the body. And then you typically you start drinking fluids that have a more rapid response of delivering nutrients to all of these organs. And so as I think about just this whole setup, how everything is laid out, it's I think you can better understand when you go into these. That's why you can say, like yesterday you were referring to you were talking about Zedekah, right? And also you were talking about repentance, about just that whole mindset of punishing yourself, sitting down in a corner, and what these technologies do is they actually help you to reset, and Zedekah gives you the nutrients that gives nutrients to all of those organs.
Exactly. You got it. That's it. That's it. It's that complicated and that simple, at the same time.
Now, what do you think it means when it says when it says without doing the mitzvah without proper intention?
Yeah.
Like
okay. So yeah. So that's an interesting point, right? So in Hebrew, the word for intention is the ability to, in essence, direct the light. So if you know that you're pulling down light, you could direct it. Mm-hmm. Right? You could direct it to certain aspects of yourself. You could direct it to other people. You could direct it to the whole world, encompass yourself into it. We have the ability to move light, right? But it all comes through the power of intention. So wherever I project my mind, when I'm doing that mitzvot, that's where it goes. But there's certain mitzvot that you don't necessarily have to have kavana. You don't necessarily have to have intent. You just do it. And then,
Yeah.
but there are certain mitzvahs where you have to have kavana. You have to know what you're doing, right? Like if you get married, right? If you get married, you got to have kavana about your wife receiving this ring, that you're giving her this ring for the sake of her, not just because of the ring, but the ring is part of the transaction, right? And so but you have to have kavana that you're doing it for that. You can't thinking like, hey, I'm giving her this ring because it really hurts in my pocket and I don't want to carry it anymore, so I'm gonna give it to you, right? That wouldn't be the kavana for marriage, right? That's a different thing. So there's certain mitzvahs, and we'll get into that, but some mitzvahs you have to have kavana, and some mitzvahs it's not so important to have kavana, right? And so he said, especially, and then there's different levels of development. Some people are at the level of development where they don't grow past maybe the childhood level, right? You see a lot of religious people like this, and I'm not trying to criticize religious people, but they didn't grow past the schools that they went to growing up. So they just do it, and they just do it because that's all they've ever done. They wake up and daven, hey, what am I? I don't know. I wake up, this is what I've been doing for 18 years of my life. So there's no kavana behind it, and they don't achieve these higher levels, although they do get credit for doing the mitzvah itself. But when we talk about all these different levels within us, we have to have kavana for it. Not having kavana only works at the rock level. That's as high as you're going to get from that. And so the higher your intentions are, the higher you go. And that's what he's teaching, right? So he's giving us a point. Like that's why he's an example of a kid that's 13. He starts the process even though he doesn't have kavana. He just
Right.
does it, right? And so because he's doing it, he's only correcting that level. But as he gets older and he works and he learns and he understands more, then his intentions and his kavana, this it will all increase, and he could correct those other levels of the different worlds of desire that are within us.
Excellent.
Okay.
Amen.
So let's just go into a little halacha, bring it back down to earth, right? Guys got to bring it down to earth. We can't stay up in the clouds. We gotta, we gotta do things the right way. Okay. So we're in the Shulchan Aruch, and so I think we're going to start a series between us when we start learning about all the different types of blessings, right? And that will be a great way now that we understand the purpose for the blessings, right? Now we understand what we're fueling when we're saying the blessings. Think about how valuable these blessings are now. If these different mitzvot that we're doing are fueling different parts of our body, what do you think the mitzvahs are? They're brachot, right? Along with actions, right? Along with intentions, right? So it says like this: Al shemunot tovot shama mipi adam ve'eman or et hadever. He says, if you receive good tidings from a reliable eyewitness, if you receive good tidings from a reliable eyewitness, and needless to say, if you witness an event yourself, you are the only one who benefits from this tiding. You recite the bracha of Shekianu. Okay? Okay, so I was just looking at it. Okay, so yeah, so he's saying you say the bracha of Shekianu. So this is the big bracha. So we'll get into how to say the bracha, but we're trying to understand. Right now we're trying to understand the bracha. So what does it mean, good tidings? So if you receive good tidings from a reliable eyewitness, okay. So I guess I mean, how do we understand good tidings? Like, I mean, I guess it's like if it's from a reliable eyewitness, if he hears good news, right? Trump is going to move all the Gazan citizens out of there, and he's going to rebuild it. Shaking on him, right? So we have that, right? And he says, but if it's good for you and others, you say Baruch Atah Hashem Eloheinu Melech Haolam Hatov HaMeitiv, right? So Hatov HaMeitiv is something that's good for the collective. So, like for examples like this, I'm gonna make it a little bit simpler than this good tidings stuff, right? I go out and I buy a new shirt, and I bring that shirt home. I buy something new. I buy a new book, and I bring it home. I say Shekianu. This is something good for me. But if say I'm at Shabbat and we're drinking wine, right? And someone brings a wine out of the cupboard that's even the better wine, right? Then we say Hatova Metiv. Why? Because everyone at the table is going to experience it. As where the shirt itself, or the book that I bought, or the new couch that I bought, or the new house that I bought, or the thing that I got for me is a Shekianu. But the thing that is for the collective, say my whole family, right? You say Hatova Metiv. He says, in other words, he is good to you, and he also does good to your fellow man. If at the time that you see or hear the tiding, you are unable to utter the bracha, either because your physical condition or because of the place you happen to be at. So, meaning that if a person is like maybe in a place where it wouldn't be appropriate to say a bracha, right? Or he's not maybe not clothed in the right way, right? He says in other words, if he is in a good, if it is good to you, and he is also good to your fellow, if at that time you see or hear the tiding, you're unable to utter the bracha, either because of your physical condition or because the place you happen to be at, then recite the bracha later. This is the rule also applies to the Baruch Dayan Emet. Oh, okay. I guess when someone dies. Okay, so there's a bracha you say when you hear about a person passing. So you say even by that. So the point is like this. There's an idea of things that are good for me, and there's things that are good for the collective. And they both have separate bracha. Chayav ha'adam li'varech ed Hashem yitvarech shemo gam al har'ah ve'sha amar. So it says like this. It is the duty to express our blessings to Hashem. Blessed be He, name even on a bad tithing. As it is said, love Hashem, your God, and with all your heart and with all the good you possess in your possession. With all of your heart means the two inner drives, the good and the evil inclination. That is, when you are engaging in worldly pursuits, you should fulfill the commandment of affirm Him in all of your undertakings. See chapter 31. With all of your soul means that if he takes away your life with all your possessions, means with all of your resources. Another meaning of the word vayechol meodecha, he says, is that in any measure that he mets out for you, whether it is measure of goodness or measure of punishment, express your gratitude to him. Thank you, Hashem. Like I remember the other day I got off. I gave a class and I was just exhausted, right? Because I'm doing like 3 of these things, sometimes 4 a day. It's like it's really intense. I was talking to the people at the Rabbinut of Israel. I was talking to this one rabbi, very like the main guy, right? And I was telling him I was like, yeah, I'm doing 3 or 4 classes these days. He's like, wow, you know what I mean? I was like, yeah, I know. And so okay, so he's saying, but okay, so what is my point for saying that? So I remember one day, like last week, I was giving a class, I was exhausted, and I was just ready to pass out, right? And I turned off the lights and I stubbed my toe. And I was thinking, like, wow, what a dichotomy. I'm on such this like energy high from all this Torah sharing, all this thing, and then I stubbed my toe. Baruch Hashem. He says, what a bracha should be, he says, what bracha should you say? Upon hearing bad things, the bracha is Baruch atah Dayan ha'emes. See, he's saying Baruch Dayan ha'emes. See, it's when they start writing in these pronunciations in English, it makes it hard for me. All right, because they're writing it in like an Ashkenaz term. They say it's emet, and he says emes. So it's like, what? All right. So he says, "The blessed are you, Hashem, the King of our God, who judge the true judge." So when we hear bad things, there's a blessing. Why? Because we have to elevate it. Everything from Hashem is good. That's why the bracha means the universe. He said the King of the universe, the true judge. So far we're learning 3 different frames of bracha, right? In terms of our thinking. And each of these brachot fill one of the 613 parts of our body, right? Each one of these brachot. It's crazy, right? So he says like this: if many tidings, if many tidings are received at the same time, whether good or evil, I guess tidings is just whatever you receive. That's what he's saying. I mean, tidings. I don't know who talks like this. So he says, whether good or evil, one bracha is sufficient for all. The blessing for adversity must be expressed in the spirit of unquestioned acceptance, as it's done when good tidings arrive. It as it is said of the good. So the idea is like this. Let's start. I think the underline what we can learn from this is is relating through experiences with holiness. So when we say we get something or something good happens to us, Shekiano, when something good happens for the community or the world, Hatova Meiti, when a person is going through difficulties, right? Dayan ha'emet, right? Right? The true judge, right? And so he says if many tidings are received at the same time, he says good or evil, the bracha, he says one bracha is sufficient for all. Right? So he's giving you the halakha, how to relate to experiences using your speech to draw light from the heavens into your limbs to fuel your body. The tithing for blessing, he says, the blessing for adversity must be expressed in a spirit of unquestioning acceptance as it's done when good tidings arrive. Right? So he said the blessing for adversity. He says when we're going through adversity, he says it's not about questioning it. We're going through adversity, and it's from Hashem. And we don't have to understand why it's happening, where it's leading us to, but we're going to get somewhere. As he says, as is done when good tidings arrive, as it is said, of kindness and judgment I will sing to you, Hashem I will sing. If you bestow kindness to me, I will sing. If you render judgment, I will likewise sing. Because in the evil fate too, the true servant of God is the source of joy and a favor, since the believer willingly accepts whatever God has decreed. Accept it. It is what it is. He says, he says, he says, firmly convinced that his suffering is an atonement for his sin. I did something, and the Shem has given me a way to do tshuva. Thus, in accepting his misfortune, he is in fact serving God, and serving God is the source of joy to him. Higia alav tova or she shama shemua tova apapi shehada varim marim she tova zot. He says if something fortunate happens to someone, or he receives good news, even though it is likely that this benefit will rise to evil, as long as he finds a precious object. And if the king's wait, let's try to understand this. Okay, even if something fortunate happens to someone, or he receives good news. Okay, that's the premise. Even though it is likely that this benefit will arise to evil. I don't know what type of situation that would be. Maybe you could say a person's business grows, and I don't know, maybe. Let's just try to figure out. He says, even though it's likely that this benefit will rise to evil. I don't know, so is it a good thing? Okay, we're going to see. As when he finds a precious object, and if the king were to discover this, in fact, he would confiscate all of his possessions. Nevertheless, he would say, Hatova Meitiv. Oh, so that's interesting how he did that. That's clever. Okay, so he says like this. So he gave a dynamic of, okay, so what happens when you see something and it's good and then later turns out to be evil? What do you do? Right? So he says the same thing. He says when he's an example of a person who finds like a precious like stone, right? It's random stone, but it belongs to the king, right? But when he finds the stone, he's going to say a shekiana, right? And then he says, but the king comes and confiscates everything, and now this is bad. And so he should say, Hatova Meiti. He says, so also if disaster strikes or someone receives bad news, even though most probably this adversity will turn to his advantage, as when the field as when his fields are flooded and his crops are ruined. But the subsiding flood water is of great benefit to him because it waters his fields. Nevertheless, he should say Diana Emmet, right? So that's an interesting point. So if I do something, or say I have this experience, I want to use another example. So I'm from LA, right? So in LA you got gangs, right? Gangs, they love colors, right? So imagine a guy, he lives in a certain neighborhood and he doesn't even know. He doesn't know about gangs or whatever, right? But he goes and buys a new shirt, and his new shirt is a red shirt, right? It's all super red. But so he says a Hatova Metiv. But when he goes outside, a bunch of guys come and say, "Hey man, why are you wearing that color red?" They start pushing him around. There he has to say Hatova Metiv. Now you could ask the question, why wouldn't he say Diana Emet, right? Because that's when you say when you have something bad that happens to you. So obviously, if you're wearing a red shirt in a neighborhood that's offensive, right, by that particular gang, right? You should say Diana Emet. He's saying no, you don't say that. You say Hatova Metiv. Now, that is Kabbalah. Now, what does that mean? Why would something that was good for me that turned out to be bad be good for the collective? Okay, we got to explore. We're not doing it right now. So he says, so also if disaster strikes someone, he says, you say Diana Emet, right? You say that bracha, since the brachas are not made for future events. You hear that? The brachas that we make, as a bracha is to say only over something that occurs here and now, right? This is a big deal. Le olam yehe adam regila lomar. Kol ma dehaved rachamana le tav aved. He says, if you should accustom yourself to always say, whatever the Almighty does is for the good. He says, Yilada ishto zakera mi vareka hatov hameti. He says, when a wife gives birth to a son, the father says, hatov hameti. The mother too should say this bracha. If a mother's child dies in childbirth, the father says shekiano, because the good has come only to him. Likewise, if a father dies before she gives birth, she recites shekiano when the child is born. That's an interesting point. Like, why is that? Is if a wife gives birth to a son, why does the father say shekiano? Why was it good for the father? Because the father has a responsibility for puravu, to have a son and a daughter. So if the child dies, the father still gets credit for having that child, right? And if the father dies before the son is born, he says Shekiano. No, that requires more research. I need to understand that more, but we're on a time crunch. Okay, so it says Met Aviv. It says upon death of a father or relative, or even an unrelated observant Jew, and certainly on the death of a Torah scholar whose death deceased us, we recite the bracha brukata Hashem Eloheinu Malcham Haolam Dayan Emet. So that's why I never really thought of this bracha in terms of just anything that bad happens. It's always something people say when you see Jews die. You may even see the abbreviation BDE, right? Bruk de Emet, right? But the bracha is Dayan Ha Emet. God is the judge, is a judge of truth. On the death of a person whose demise does not cause much anguish, Baruch Dain Emet should be said. Okay, so the closer you are, the bigger the bracha, right? So you hear about God, unfortunately, you hear about a person dying, you say Baruch Dain Emet. And he should said, omitting the divine name and kingship. If a father leaves property to his son as an inheritance, the son also says Shechianu. If there is another brother who shares inheritance, then instead of Shechianu, he says Hatov Meti. It's obvious, right? One is for one is for collective. Benav or Kana, Bait or Kana, Kalim or Malabushim, Ha Shuvim. He says, if you build or bought a house or you bought vessels or valuable clothing, even if you already own similar possessions, as long as you have never owned these objects, this includes objects you sold and then bought back, you should take pleasure in owning them and say Shekiano. So we talked about in the beginning. When you buy stuff, you buy clothes, this, jewelry, whatever it is, Shekiano. The bracha should be recited at the time you make the purchase or upon the completion of the building, even though you have not yet made use of them. For the bracha is said over the happiness you experience when you acquire them. So he says, and when you buy a new garment for the first time, and you say the bracha, he who clothes the naked, even though, let me see what he's saying here. He says, the bracha of Malabish Arumim, right? He who clothes the naked. That's interesting. Even though you said Malabish Arumim in your morning prayers, you repeat it when you put on your new clothes. However, if you had a new garment on in the morning, the bracha in the morning prayer exempts you from saying it again. Some authorities hold that even if when you buy a hat, you should wear it for the first time, you should say the bracha of he who crowns Israel with splendor. That's interesting. I didn't know that. What about when you put on your kippah? All right. So he says, when putting on a new belt, you say, Ozir Israel, Bigavura, he who grids Israel with strength. He says, other authorities disagree with this opinion. Therefore, it is best to put them on for the first time in the morning, and you say you have in mind to exempt them when you. God, it's intense. People are just calling me. He says, therefore, it's best to put them on the first time in the morning and have the morning, for to exempt them when you say those brachot in your morning prayers. If you have a new talis, then after you tie the tzitzit to it, you recite the bracha shekiano. If you do not say it at that time, you should say it when you wrap yourself in it for the first time, following the bracha libashem b'tzitzit. Okay, so let's stop here because these things go. These are big studies, right? But we're in the game. We're in the game, right? We're in the game, and we are learning how God creates experiences, and that He literally gives us words to draw the light from that experience, right? So whether it's a good thing that happens, whether it's a bad thing that happens, whether we buy a new thing, whether we get a new gift, whether a person passes away, a person's born, all these experiences, we want to draw the light of the Creator. And as we draw the light of the Creator from the endless world by having intentions and reciting the action, we draw that light. And what? One of our either our 248 limbs or the 365 organs, body parts type of thing, right? And so so that's the name of the game. We want to get stronger. Like people are like, yeah, man, I want to get buff, right? They go to the gym, I want to get buff. No, I want to get spiritually buff. I want my limbs, I want my inner part. I want to be. You see some of these older guys, they're strong as but it's an inner strength, right? And you see a little bitty Jewish guy could take down a whole situation. They're like, man, that little guy got some might, right? No, it's the halakha, it's the Torah, it's kedusha. right? So all of us have that. Any ideas, points, reflections?
Yeah, the part with the blessing with the father, if the mother dies, it just made me think about it that he would say, I guess he would say, shaking ya, how do you say it? Shekiyanu, because he's the only one that's benefiting.
Yeah.
I guess because he's the only one benefiting, and then everything else under that would be under the framework that whatever happens, Hashem is good. He's
Yeah.
in control, basically.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I just thought about, when we buried our daughter, the blessing was said about acceptance of judgment and some other ones. And I'll be honest, Rabbi, I remember sitting there and hearing this being read, and spoken for the first time, and I really couldn't process it. I could not process it. I was hearing the word judgment, I was like, felt a particular way. And I'm sure it was just, the ego and just this, that, and feeling like, okay, your whole life is on display and this has happened to you and you're, or like, Hashem has just forsaken you, and most high forbid that's not the case. But later when I began to just go through my women's Siddur later and just reading through, I just wept when I read about just the bereavement, the death, and the funeral, and all this, and I got it. It was like this, like, whoa, Hashem is just, and His judgments are so right. He understands everything that I don't understand at that particular time. But when you really, just tap into these blessings and the barakas, you see things from a set apart, a Kodesh perspective. You don't see things from your own mindset or how you've been taught. It's reframing, rechanging your mind so that you can really, just be who Hashem has called you to be. And it's just, I just thought that was something that I experienced.
And may my daughter's may Hannah's memory be blessed.
Yeah.
Today's actually her birthday.
Woo!
But yeah, today's her birthday. And
With the light candles.
Yeah.
Like candles, yes, we got a candles too. I think too, within the Hebrew culture, Hebrew Israelite culture, what you will find is that there is a reaching, there's a reaching to learn more, right? And so at her funeral, the brother that actually recited that blessing, he was reading out of a siddur, but it wasn't from the aspect of, hey, this is what I'm reading out of. It wasn't like no one knew why it was being read. Didn't so it's almost like we have those that's within the community that are reaching towards these technologies, but really not understanding why and the real reason behind what they're actually saying. And some might, but they're not sharing it. Sharing that understanding with everyone. And so partly I believe that my wife was looking at that what is he saying? Based upon, before you do something like that, you should communicate, this is what this is about. But it might be that sometimes, we're doing things but not understanding why we're doing them.
But
So that's why it's important.
truthfully, we probably don't know why we're doing half the things we're doing. You know what I mean? Like we're just operating. You know, we got some intentions, and God guides us. You know, to things, to people, and it's an amazing life, but it's a difficult life. You know, and it's great moments of joy, and then there's like you just got hit by a truck. You know what I mean? And God is telling us this is all part of the correction of your soul.
That's
And
right.
you know, when you see people, you know, it's an interesting story I heard years and years ago, and it was a story about two guys. You know, one guy, both guys are very accomplished people, very successful. This, all types of things. And so one day on the way to work, both of these guys, not knowing each other, right? Two parallel lives, you know, two people, they end up at a Starbucks, right? And they end up at a Starbucks, you know, coffee place, whatever. And one buys, there's actually standing in line next to each other. So one guy goes and buys his coffee, the other guy standing in line. And you know, like in Starbucks, you have to go on the side and you know, you put together the little sprinkles, whatever, sugars, whatever you want in your you make that section. So as the other guy behind him buys his coffee as well, he's walking over in that same area and they run into each other. And the guy who was first, the coffee spills on him, right? And at that moment, there was this intense moment of like anger. And then for some reason, they were able to, you know, create peace with each other, right? They said, oh, don't worry about it. I'm sorry. You know, have a good day. Don't worry, blah, blah, blah. So the guy who forgave him, the first guy who said sorry, he goes home. He decides to stop at his house on the way to work. He says, he had his coffee. And he said, I'm stopping upstairs. He lays in his bed and he dies, right? So this rabbi was giving this analogy saying, is Rob Berg in blessed memory, the guy who started Kabbalah Center. He's the one who told me the story. He passed away years ago. And so, but I'm very, his son Yehuda is still with me. And, you know, obviously there's people in heaven supporting this efforts. But the point is just saying that he he the story is that in a past life, these two guys for many lifetimes were war generals and they were battling each other in multiple lifetimes. So in this lifetime, they're just regular business guys, but they had this moment where they had a frustration and they created peace. So that peace that they created in his lifetime was the purpose for that one soul. The other soul had other things he had to deal with too, but this particular soul, he did everything. He had wife, he had kids, he had money. But the main reason why he came in this world to deal with this and rectify this issue with this other soul, right? And so what is it? He said, what is the lesson behind that? The lesson behind that is that we don't know what level of correction people's souls are at. You can't look at a person and say, oh, well, I know this. So many of the people passed away, their souls were corrected. They finished the job that they were supposed to do. Right. And for us, we're like, wait, why are you leaving me? And they're like, what? I mean, I did my work, right? I did my work. I got to go to the next place. I'll see you on the other side, right? I got to go, right? And so it just, you know, when we look at life and we look at these experiences, like we don't know, you know, we don't know who we were in past lives. We don't know what the tikkunim is. All we have is the Torah. And some people, you have infants, like Otinel, right? Otinel is one of his close friends. His daughter died, 1 year old. Now, a person with very little consciousness could be like, wait, how could this happen? We don't know. That's all that soul needed. That's what that soul needed. That soul needed to come and live those 365 days and have people care for them and this or whatever the things that transpired. And that was it. Game over. They're in the next reality where we're trying to get to. Where we are trying to get to, they are married at that. But we feel that sadness. We feel that doesn't take away from us feeling sadness, us feeling lost. That's why God gives us the ability to sit Shiva and to mourn, right? Because these things allow us to connect to that soul as it elevates in the heavens, right? And so it's just important. And even when we see people that aren't holding at the spiritual level that we're at or aspire to the things we aspire to, how do you know? In their past life, they could have did all the Kabbalah, all the mitzvahs, all everything, and they just got to come in this world just for this particular thing. They're like, but wait, but they're not religious. They're not keeping Shabbos. How do you know? How do you know why God brought them in? Or someone who grows up in a religious family, and all of a sudden they break away and they don't want to keep this and I want to do it. And they have to go out on their own journey. We look at it like, dang, he got problems. But that may have been the reason to grow up in such an environment and to break away and form his own destiny. Right? So we can't look at the world and say, and look at people and judge and say, oh, well, you should be doing this. You should. That's the whole idea of converting people. How do you know that's good for their soul? How's that good for the soul? Let people gravitate to their truth. Right? And so that's the spirit, that we want to have from this teaching, is just to look at the world around us and be like, bro, we don't know. We don't know. People are crazy. Even the plants. The plants got a correction. The animals got correction. Why is that animal acting like that? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, just have this in mind. It should just bring us to a place of more peace, right? More peace, more acceptance, more like it's all good, it's okay. All this crazy stuff people run. Go ahead.
Since you mentioned animals, I did have another question.
Okay.
When it talks about going back, when it talks about the aspect in this world, the aspect of the soul in this world is the human. Then it says that the aspect in this world, the animal is the angels. Do you remember reading that?
Wait, the aspect of the human, so the highest level of desire is the human. Underneath that is animal, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Right.
but you saying angels? I don't know about the angel part.
Yeah, it says. Let's see. Here it is. It's in chapter 42. It says, in addition to the five sephirot of Pahavtum that are present in each world also contains the four spiritual elements: inanimate, plant, animal, and human. The soul of man is the aspect of the human. The animal aspect is the angels in that world.
So the animals is the angels in that world.
Well, the animal aspect is the angels in that world.
And you said that's chapter 42.
Chapter 42.
See if I can go to it.
It's in the second section of 42.
Okay, looks good.
All right. So section. Okay. So hold on, let me bring up the screen. All right, hold on a second. All these like crazy messages coming in. Hold on. All right. Where we holding at? Where we holding at? Where we holding at? We're holding at 1 second. Okay, here we go. All right, hold on. Okay, so 42. So it says Vahine. So it says it is now clear that the four worlds include the entire spiritual reality that flows from the infinite world. However, each world is included in each other. Each world contains the five. Each world contains something of the five, in the five spherot, right? And that's so that's the five. That's the Keter Hokmah Bina, Tiferet, and Malchut. And he says, into which they are enclosed into the five lights, which is the Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama Chaim Yekida, of the parallels to the world. He says, Umal Bed, in addition to the five spherotes, he said, in addition to the five spherotes, the five phases that are present in each world also contains four elements: animate, plant, animal and human. The animal soul is the aspect of the human. The the animal aspect is the angels in that world, and the plants referred to the lavush, the clothing, and the aspect of the inanimate is referred to the chambers. For these aspects are all dressed up on one another. For the human aspect, which is the soul of man, dresses up in the five phases, which are the divinity of that world. The matter of the 10 sphirot being divine will be clarified in the preface of the Zohar. The animal aspect, which is the angels dressed up the soul, the plant aspect, which are the levush, dressed up as the angels. In the aspect of the inanimate aspect, which is which surrounds us, all of them. So what he's saying here is this aspect of the world of the angels, right? So so it's like this. So he's saying that when you talk about the five worlds, right? When you talk about the five worlds, that there's an idea like this. He says like this. Okay. So this is going to get deep. All right. So he's saying like this. So he said, so like look at it this way. So now that you know about the five worlds, let's put it together, right? So we're in this world, we're in the world of Asiya, right? So we do a mitzvah. This mitzvah goes and creates an angel in the world of formation. And this angel that's created in the world of formation goes up to the world of creation. This is what we're talking about, that animal aspect of Bria. And that aspect brings down that light from the world of creation, the world of Bria, down into the world of Asiya where we're at. So everything that we think is coming from an angel that went and took a thought from the heavens and brought it to us. But what created that angel? Our actions. Our actions create the angels. Our angels go and bring different lights and that. So if we are doing bad things, we're going to create negative angels. So he's saying that world of angel participation, and I'm going to ask Rabbi Pinchas about it because this is very like, is he saying exactly how I'm saying it? But I'm going to ask Rabbi Pinchas, Chief Rabbi Pinchas. So, but that the idea of saying that the idea of Bria is the world of creation, right? So that's where all the things of creation exist in the spiritual sense. But the angels, how we receive that has to do with how we act in this world of action, which creates an angel, which goes up to this world and brings us down, back down this light, our thoughts and our ideas and our emotions. So the emotions we feel is a byproduct of an angel. Like the secular world, the non-Jewish world says, no, it's all in the brain. The brain does everything. No, the spiritual world tells us that no, it's the brain, it's the brain, it's the brain is just a reciprocator or receives spiritual light. And that spiritual light goes through us. Yes, it functions through the brain and the cognitive patterns and all the stuff, but it's that. So that's the way I understand the aspect of the animal level, which is the level of Bria, being this aspect of angels, and then this aspect of plant kingdom being the garments, right? And the rock kingdom being the surrounding part. But I'm gonna get exact more clarity to make sure I'm correct on that. But I think I'm pretty good.
That's powerful because that okay, I can see that why it would even refer why you would could make the connection with animals from that just not thinking about an animal in general, but the whole function that from us we're actually creating messengers. We're
Yeah.
creating messengers that from our actions. And so when we do good mitzvot, we're creating and we have good intentions and we're doing things the right way. We're creating these good messengers, these really positive entities that are able to go and get more down from us. You know that they're getting more for us rather than when we do negative, so that adds to the understanding, man, that I'm sorry.
No, I was thinking like, okay, that seemed like it was almost like decoded too. Like you had to relate the animal to like the other the immunization and the action, the creation, the formation, all those things. I may have them out of order, but just kind of keep the mindset in that same vein to, not necessarily saying that the animals are.
Well, even from the aspect of what the animals that we're allowed to eat, from that aspect, there are animals that are clean. And when you think about a lot of those clean animals, that a lot of them are very docile, and the sheep and goat, whatever.
They're
and
chill.
they,
They're
they
chill.
Yeah, rather than a shark. You're not gonna jump in and have a shark. But maybe when we do bad things, we're creating sharks. We're creating ferocious angels, basically that are basically tearing our lives down.
Yeah, and the thing is, and this is a really big secret, and one of the reasons why I think that they scared of people knowing this wisdom is that in the world of creation, the sages teach, and I'm pretty sure he's going to get into this later on, all the ideas that will ever exist in human existence are already created. So ideas that exist 1,000 years from now, depending if Mashiach comes or not, or 100 years, those ideas already exist. And we, with our intention, we could bring down those ideas, right? The thing is, we have to have the spiritual vessel to receive it, right? So we have access to all knowledge, all wisdom, everything that came in the past and everything that came in the future. What Rav Ashlag is giving you, he didn't come up with this. This was the tradition of how to decode and understand these spiritual texts. He's just putting it in a way that he thinks is the most simplistic way to explain it, which he's a master at. He's so clear, obviously, right? So, but this is not, he didn't come up with this. He's had teachers, all these type of things. They may have had inspiration, they may have had angels. Like if you're in a place of inspiration and you're spiritual, he's like, no, there's an angel with me right now. I'm in this place of inspiration, right? Even Marvin Gaye, he talks about the album he came out. He said, no, it's like angels came to me. He said that. I saw it in an interview once, right? I don't know what album it was, but it was a big one. It was about love and peace and the whole thing. He felt he's healing the world with it, right? And so it's just to say that those levels exist in the potential of that's why you have to make people slaves. That's why you have to give them the worst food. That's why you have to give them that. And that we think black people, we getting it bad, right? Yeah, we did. But us being treated bad allowed other people who are also treated bad to not think they were being treated bad. They used us to conceal the total slavery. The white man was a slave too. They just gave him a few more extra privileges, right? I'm talking to my family on Thanksgiving, right? The master said you could take a day off and have a turkey. And if you didn't say, you have to go to work, and if you don't go to work, you don't get paid, and if you don't get paid, you lose your house, right? So it's just saying that who we are as human beings is the question we should ponder on. How far can we go? How much knowledge can we acquire? What is our potential? We're looking at ourselves as a report card still. I'm good at this. I'm not so good at that. What are you talking about? God give you skills to do whatever. What do you mean? It's called divine inspiration, right? Rav Ashlag, what he wrote, what we're reading right now, they said he had complete arthritis in his hands. He couldn't barely move his hands. But when it came to him writing this paper, what we're reading right now, he could do it for all day, hours and hours and hours. But once he stopped writing, the arthritis came back, right? So it's just saying, go ahead.
Yeah, we read that he as he was writing this, it took him he wrote for like 18 hours a day.
Yeah.
18 hours a day, and he just took time out to sleep, which was very, significant. And he he even there was even a note that he mentioned, because of a lack of resources, right? That he wasn't able to afford more paper to continue writing, literally to continue writing. And so he was like, if I had more resources, I could write more, But I do have one last question I have is so is it possible for someone to actually bring down a particular knowledge, information, and their vessel not be ready for it, not be prepared
Or, yeah,
for it?
big time. You see it all the time.
Wow.
Yeah, you get wiped out. That's why they don't teach it. Because a person who's not ready could go into gates that he's not ready for, and then he gets burnt up. That's why we got to go slowly and slowly. Like there's a lot of Kabbalistic meditations. I don't mess with them right now. I can't
Yeah.
go there. Because once you go into that place, I need to have an infrastructure around me where I could stay in those places for hours and hours at a time. Right now, I can't do that. You know what I'm saying? I'm too hands-on. Eventually, I have infrastructure and a staff, and I could spend most of my day and time in meditation. Right. All right. So we'll continue tomorrow, same time. Let's do 16 o'clock tomorrow, if possible. Not 15:30. If we could do 16, that would be good. So yeah. So any last points? Any last statements?
Toda.
No, Toda.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Okay. Perfect. Baruch atah Adonai leolam. Amen.